After last night's debacle at the Apex with Macy Barber pulling out of the main event just seconds before she was supposed to walk out, I am very happy to say it's pay-per-view fight week. We're not dealing with all the trash stuff we have to deal with at the Apex, the weight misses, the cancellations, all that. It's out the door. Hopefully, cross your fingers, we don't got to deal with any of that this week, and I don't expect that we're going to, because we got two titles on the line. We got a bantamweight bout and another bantamweight bout, men's and women, coming out here looking for the belt. We got O'Malley and Merab rematch, the fight that nobody really asked for, but it's happening. Merab's going to be a big favorite in this one. We'll see how that works out. I'll give you my thoughts on that, of course. And we got another big favorite with Kayla Harrison in the second title bout. Main card overall, I think, is pretty solid. The prelims are actually really solid. Sometimes on these pay-per-view cards, the prelims are just straight trash. There's some really solid matchups on the prelims. I'm going to go through every single fight on the card. I'll give you a little breakdown of my early thoughts going into this. But just remember, this is before I dive deep into the tape. I'm just kind of looking at the matchups, looking at what I know about these fighters and how I think, it'll play out. I'll also talk about the betting line. And we got a couple UFC debuters who I did have to watch a little bit of film on just so I could come prepared, give you something about this fighter. Not that I knew him before, but I did watch some film on them. We're going to go through and do that. These are my early picks, my early leans. But before we get into the card, as always, we got to recap how it went last night. It did not go well last night. At the Apex, we were down minus 2.19 units on the straight bets, the props, the money lines, the round props. Couple bad bets. Ludovic Klein ultimately was a bad bet. And you eat that one on the chin, and you tip your hat to Gamrot. I thought Gamrot looked better than I've really seen him in a lot of fights. I mean, he really came out there looking to make a statement, and you tip your cap. The DFS place was so frustrating because we had 4 entries this week that got refunded due to cancellations. Macy Barber was in 2 of them, and that fight got canceled, so 2 of the ones that actually made it to fight day did get refunded. So ultimately, we just had 1 entry, and we lost it because Zachary Reese went to a decision. Crazy stuff in 2025 for Zachary Reese and Dusko Todorovic to go to a decision, but it did happen. So overall, we were down 3.19 units in net profit last night on UFC Vegas 107. But on the year, we're still positive 35.62 units. If you want all those bets, you can jump in the Home of Fight Picks Premium membership, use code HeyJive, and you'll get a 5-day free trial. I want to go over this because people are going to be like, oh, why would you ever want to tail this guy? He just lost 3 units on last night's card. He must suck. Well, the deal here is we want a slow and steady win rate, okay? And we have done that so far in 2025. And I actually look back at my 2024 totals, and we were way behind from where we are right now in 2025. And last year, I was up over 100 units when it was all said and done. This year, we're up 35.62, but you can see the incline right here. A couple losses is not going to hurt us too much. We did lose last night. We lost on UFC Des Moines, but we're positive in 9 of the last 11 UFC cards. And I'm going to show you all the results right here once I get my camera off right there. I always like to be transparent, so if you want to check this out, you can. This is pretty much everything you need to know. Net win-loss, total bets, unit bet, unit return, ROI, average bet size. As you can see here, you check out the results. I believe it's 13 of the 18 UFC cards this year. We have been profitable, and I am very happy to see that it's a pay-per-view fight week because we have been profitable in all the pay-per-views this year so far, 5-0, and hopefully we can make that 6-0, plus 23.91 units on pay-per-views. So the higher-end fights tend to work out well for us. But if you want all those bets, jump on the Home of Fight Picks Premium membership. Use code HeyJive, 5-day free trial. There's a link down in the description below. That's where you're going to get all my UFC bets, and you're going to get the DFS plays earlier. So when I put them in on Monday, it's usually Monday, but whenever I put them in, you're going to get them automatically sent to your phone through Winnable, through a text. And you're going to be able to lock those in before all the lines move, before I give them out later in the week on Thursday for free. Let's get into the fights this week. We got Quillen Salkilld and Yanal Ashmouz, I guess, kicking off the card. Quillen Salkilld, I believe this guy is pretty dang good, man. Pretty dang good. And The books are respecting him. He's minus 410. He's a pretty heavy favorite here. Yeah, now I'm not super high on, never really have been. He's a serviceable fighter, but I think he's just a little bit outskilled here. I think Salkild's probably the better striker, probably the better grappler. Yeah, Ashmouz picked up a win against Trevor Peek his last time out. Pretty much just took him down a bunch and was just way better skill-wise, and Trevor Peek just wasn't on his level. But that's not exactly, Trevor Peek's skill level isn't really super up there. He's just going in there throwing bombs and hoping for the best. And Ashmouz was able to make him pay and get a dub there. But overall, I think this fight is probably going to come down to Salkilld being faster, more effective on the feet. He'll probably be able to mix in some takedowns if he needs to. And Ashmouz, if he wants to win, I think he's probably got to land some big shots and maybe look to wet blanket this guy. And I just don't really know that Ashmouz has that in his bag. I think, maybe Ashmouz can land a couple takedowns, but I don't know that he's going to be holding him down, landing ground and pound, being super effective with it. So I think Salkild's probably going to get this one done. It's going to be a pretty brief breakdown right here because I just think Salkild's just that much better than Ashmouz. And I think it's somewhat warranted, but, he's not super proven. They're both 8-1, so who knows where their future is going to be. But if I had to, bet on one of these guys' future, it's probably going to be Quillen Salkilld. So Salkild's going to be the early pick. Let's move on to the next one. We got a UFC debuter here, Ju Sang Yu. I believe this guy is, I don't know if he's part of the Korean Zombie fight team, but I know he fought in the Korean Zombies promotion, and I think that's why he's getting the nod here to come into the UFC, because I believe they did something for Dana White looking for a fight with the Korean Zombies fighting promotion. He must have been on that. He got a knockout his last time out. So I think that's probably why he got signed. He's a huge favorite here, which is ultimately, instantly, you're like, pump the brakes. Undefeated guy from South Korea who hasn't really fought that many good opponents coming in here. He's minus 500 in his UFC debut. Pump the brakes. But Saragih is pretty dang bad. He is not very good. And, getting submitted by Weston Wilson, you should probably get cut. And I don't think this guy ever really deserved to be in the UFC, but he is from a part of the world in Indonesia where they don't really have any sort of representation in the UFC. And he's somewhat of an exciting fighter because he's going to go out there and either finish his opponent or he's going to get finished. So he's got that going for him. It looks like he has taken some seriousness to his career, but because his ultimate downfall is his wrestling and his grappling game. Because on the feet, he could throw bombs, he could throw some leg kicks. He's just very aggressive on the feet, but if he gets taken down, he's like a fish out of water. And that's why I bet on Weston Wilson to submit him in round 1. And he did that. I think he's just too far gone on the skill level. Like, you're not going to just be able to become like some good grappler, some wrestler in a couple months or even a year. His skill level on the mat is just so low. I don't know that Ju Sang Yu is going to be able to completely expose him on there, because I don't think Ju Sang Yu, these names are terrible for me to pronounce. Not terrible in general. Don't come at me. Ju Sang Yu, probably going to be able to get takedowns, probably going to be able to dominate Saragih on the ground. But if Saragih can stuff a couple takedowns, I don't think Ju Sang Yu is some amazing striker. Like, he wants to get in your face, he wants to throw, and he wants to mix in some takedowns. He can also struggle to get held up against the cage in the fights that I did watch. I don't know that Jekka's going to be able to do that, though. So, overall, I think Ju Sang Yu is probably the rightful favorite. It is super, super chalky, because Saragih can still crack, and if he hits Ju Sang Yu with something that he's not ready for, I mean, this guy is not proven, man. He's just not proven whatsoever. So if he gets hit with something that he hasn't been hit before and doesn't react right, Jekka could maybe knock him out. But I think Ju Sang Yu's probably better skilled overall, taken for the early pick. Ariane Lipski taking on Kong Wang. Bang, bang, Wang Kang back in action. I am a big believer in Kong Wang, and even though she did take her loss to Gabriela Fernandez, I mean, she was dominating that entire fight until she got a little bit overzealous and ultimately sold the fight, and she lost. She got knocked down and then choked out. But I think she comes in here against almost anybody outside the top 5 in the flyweight division and outstrikes them. Like, I think she's probably the best striker outside the top 5, just off the top of my head, that we'll see at the women's flyweight division. She's very fast. She's long. She hits hard. She goes to all the levels. She goes to the head, to the body, to the legs. She mixes it up very well, and it looks like she's pretty strong and big for the weight class. So, I mean, she's not going to be able to, just get taken down and ragdolled. I think she's solid enough there. On the other side, Ariane Lipski has been around for a while. She's a really solid striker, but she doesn't. Her downfall has always been her ground game. I don't know that she's going to get exposed in that in this one, but I think she's probably just going to be a step behind a little bit. I mean, I think she can keep up with Kong Wang for the first 7.5 minutes, but then I think Kong Wang's going to start to get some reads. She's going to start to just try to set some traps, and I think she's ultimately going to win the fight. So I think Kong Wang's going to win here. I'm going to take her for the early pick. Ariane Lipski, she's also kind of hot and cold. She'll have some performances where she looks amazing, and then some performances where she just looks terrible. So Kong Wang's going to be the early pick. I just think she's the more consistent fighter. I think she's the higher ceiling fighter. I think she's probably one of the best strikers outside of the top 5, and I see this as a mainly striking affair. So I'll take Kong Wang for the early pick. Chaos Williams taking on Andreas Gustafsson. So Gustafsson was supposed to fight Trevin Giles last night. Trevin Giles pulls out. They rebook him a week later against Chaos Williams. Chaos Williams was supposed to fight Uros Medic. Uros Medic pulls out. So in steps Gustafsson. And, when I first saw this fight announced, I was like, Chaos Williams might nuke this dude outside of the octagon. Like, he might hit him so hard because Gustafsson's there to be hit. He might hit him so hard he flies out of the octagon. And I think that's probably true. Like, just looking at this fight, Gustafsson is so bad at range that I think Chaos Williams is probably going to be able to hit him with something hard pretty early on. But if Gustafsson can get to that clinch, Chaos is a big, strong guy. So I don't know that Gustafsson is going to overwhelm him with that. But if he can snowball it, if he can get to him early, just snowball, tire Chaos Williams out, who has historically had pretty good cardio, but if he's going up into, a clinch fest, grappling type of fight, I don't think his cardio is going to be amazing. And the big thing with Chaos is his knockout power. He's not some real technical striker that's going to put on a 15-minute, masterclass of striking. He's more of a guy that's going to go in there. He wants to kickbox with you. He could throw some hard leg kicks, but really he wants to find that big shot and knock you out. And after the first 7.5 minutes, that big shot to knock you out just isn't as effective. So I think if Gustafsson can maybe get into that clinch early, start to tire him out, then he can lower the danger level from Chaos Williams a little bit to where he could snowball that and maybe take over this fight, maybe get a late finish or get to a decision. But again, my initial instincts was Chaos Williams should knock this dude head outside of the octagon. So right now I'm going to take the early pick on Chaos Williams. I believe he's a favorite a little bit north of minus 200, so I think it kind of makes sense. But I'm probably not going to be super invested in this guy this week, Chaos Williams, because I think Gustafsson is terrible, but I also think he's good. Like, it's just one of those bipolar type of fighters where they could look amazing or they could just look terrible. Chaos Williams is going to be the early pick. That was kind of long-winded, but this is an interesting matchup for me. Let's move on. Markel Mederos taking on Mark Choinski. Mark Choinski making his UFC debut out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Shout-outs to the MKE. He's 29 years of age, training out of Rufusport. I did some homework on this guy, watched a couple of his fights. He's a 3-time All-American Division III wrestler at UW Oshkosh. Now, Division III wrestling is obviously not D1, but if you're wrestling in Division III, you probably want to be somewhere in Wisconsin because Wisconsin has some pretty good wrestling. I mean, it's Division III. I'm from Wisconsin, so I know Division III, we have some of the best Division III sports programs just because there's no D2 and there's no D1 outside of UW-Madison. There's Milwaukee, but they're not big into sports. So there's UW-Madison, which is D1, and then there's no D2, and there's only D3, and there's like a ton of D3s. And all the Wisconsin talent usually goes to the Division IIIs because It's closer. It's not super expensive. So a lot of talent does get pushed into those D3 programs. So I think UW Oshkosh Division III All-American, like that's a great feather in your cap. But when I was watching his fights, I was like, he's not exactly going in there just wrestling dudes up and like just destroying them on the mat. Like obviously this is MMA, so your wrestling pedigree isn't just going to completely transform. We've seen that with Bo Nickel. We've seen that with a lot of guys. So I don't think that's going to play a huge factor in here. I know he has it in his back pocket, and he does mix it in some of his fights. I think he's going to have to mix it into this one. If he doesn't mix it into this fight, he's probably going to get pieced up because Mederos is very fluid with his striking, very fluid with his movement. And yes, we saw him get taken down by Austin Hubbard, but Austin Hubbard knows how to, mix in his wrestling, I think, a little bit better than a young 8-0 Mark Choinski. Choinski might have the better wrestling on paper, but MMA wrestling and just wrestling in general is just completely different. So I think Mederos probably wins this one. I think he's probably just going to be able to outpoint him on the feet. I don't think Choinski is a terrible striker, but he's just not going to be on the level of Markel Mederos. So I'll take Mederos to get this one done. He was supposed to fight last week. He had to pull out with an illness. I think he was sick for like a few days and he had to pull out. So they rebooked him this week. I would assume if he took the fight for this week, he's feeling better. And I think he's going to come in here and probably get a W. Probably, I could see it probably by decision because I think Choinski's pretty tough. Mederos is going to be the early pick. Azamat Murzakanov taking on Brendason Ribeiro. This might be one of my favorite fights on the card outside from the main card. Murzakanov, he's a really good kickboxer, but the guy is not active. He's not exactly a super high volume. He hasn't even had that many fights. He really hasn't. He's 36 too. He's like such a wild card because you see him whenever he performs, he looks great, looks good, but he's 36 and he doesn't fight very often. He was supposed to fight Johnny Walker here. We pretty much know what was going to happen in that one. It was probably going to be Murzakanov bouncing Johnny Walker's head off the canvas. So, good thing Johnny Walker pulled out. Brendason Ribeiro, on the other hand, was kind of thought of to be this trash fighter because he took back-to-back losses to Ming Yang Zhang and Magomed Gachiazulov, who was an absolute bum. But then he got a couple wins. Those wins were Kyle Machado, who is also a bum, and last time out against Dayar Nergozhai, the undefeated Kazakhstan prospect that has the old eye twitch or whatever, eye tick, and he submitted him. Ribeiro is huge. He's going to be way bigger. He's going to be way bigger than Murzakanov. So there's a lot of aspects to this fight that, make me take a look at Brendason Ribeiro, who's a plus 425 underdog. He's a huge underdog in this one. He's going to be taller. He's going to be longer. He has knockout power. He probably has some grappling upside. Not that Murzakanov is a bad grappler, but, I don't really see Murzakanov going out there looking for takedowns. I think, if anything, Ribeiro is going to be the guy looking for takedowns. Murzakanov, I think, is way cleaner, way more thought out, probably a little bit faster, inside the pocket. But he is older as well. Like, there's a lot of stuff to like on the Ribeiro side when you're just looking at, the box statistics. 8 years younger, 5 inches taller, 10-inch reach advantage, fights more often. But Murzakanov, undefeated, Russian, knockout power, really solid striking, solid takedown defense. So I'm going to take Murzakanov for the early pick, but he is a massive favorite here, and I just don't know how he covers that outside of like a round 1 knockout. We'll see. But Murzakanov's going to be the early pick. Let's move on to another prelim that I think is going to be really solid. Sergey Spivac versus Waldo Cortes-Acosta. We talked about this one a little bit on the live streams, and people were super interested in this one, which is crazy to me because it's a prelim heavyweight fight. But Waldo is a really solid fighter that I think is going to beat a lot of the guys outside the rankings. But this is a big step up. Sergey's fought the who's who in the division. He's taken his losses to some of the top guys, but he's also got some nice wins. Beating Marcin Tybura, even in 2024, whenever he did it, I think it was 2024, is still pretty solid. You know, beating Derek Lewis, I think that was 2023, still pretty solid, man. I think Sergey Spivac has the advantage in the experience. He's got the grappling upside. He has like a 60-some% takedown accuracy. Waldo, you know, he looks like a really solid frame, and he has shown some okay takedown defense, but what grapplers has he really faced? You know, the only guy that took him down was Marcos Rogerio de Lima, who's not an amazing grappler, but he can grapple a little bit. Outside of that, nobody's really looking to take him down. You know, he's got wins over the bottom of the barrel of the UFC heavyweight division. A lot of guys have been cut, and his last win against Ryan Spann, like, that's cool, but, you know, Ryan Spann after round 1 is not a fighter that is having a lot of success. So what did he do? He got him into round 2, and then he TKO'd him. I think Sergey Spivac comes in here, gets the takedowns on Waldo, and gets it done. I got to look at it a little bit more, but, you know, from the slight research that I did before I made this video, I think Spivac is probably going to be the side. I'm going to take Spivac for the early pick. I think he gets it done, gets those takedowns, you know, puts some ground and pound on Waldo. Waldo doesn't have a neck, so that's a little bit, you know, sketchy for Spivac to possibly get a sub, but even if he just gets on top of him, I think he can land some ground and pound and either get him out of there or just wet blanket him for 3 rounds. Sergey Spivac's going to be the early pick. Another good prelim here. We got Bruno Silva, Joshua Van. And this also almost seems like, I don't want to say a step down in competition for Joshua Van, but, you know, he had that setback to Charles Johnson. And then he's so active. He's trying to get fights. And it's like, dude, we kind of need somebody better. You know, Bruno Silva's 35. He wasn't very active for the longest time, but he did pick up a couple wins. And then he got beat to shreds against Manel Kopp. And Manel Kopp is a lot different of a striker than Joshua Van, but he's also a really good striker. And I think Joshua Van is probably going to do similar things to Bruno Silva. Probably going to piece him up on the feet. You know, I don't think Bruno Silva is going to be getting a ton of takedowns here. I think Joshua Van's takedown defense has looked really good, especially as of late. I know Bruno's got some pop in his shots, so maybe he could crack Joshua Van with something, but the forward pressure from Joshua Van is going to melt a lot of these guys. And as long as he can keep stuffing those takedowns and you know, avoid the big power from these guys in the flyweight division, then I think he's going to win a lot of fights. And I think this is another matchup where he's going to win it with his forward pressure, with his volume, break him down, either get a late finish or win a decision. I think he could probably get a finish here, man. You know, if Manel Kopp's getting you out of there in round 3, I think Joshua Van's constant forward pressure can break you before that final bell. So I think Joshua Van's going to get this one done inside the distance. I'll take Joshua Van for the early pick. Before we get into the main card, once again, if you want all my bets, jump in the Home of Five Picks Premium membership. As I said, last year in 2024, at this point in time, 18 cards throughout the year, we're at a worse point than we are right now in 2025, and we still finished up over 100 units. So right now, in 2025, we're positive 35.62 units, which is way ahead of where we were last year. So if you want to jump in the Home of Five Picks Premium membership and get all my bets, jump in or use code HeyDrive, get you a 5-day free trial. There's a link down in the description below. And if you need a sports book, Wager Attack is available in all 50 states. I used it for 4 or 5 of my bets on my premium bets this past week. You get a 200% free play bonus when on your first deposit. So 200% free play bonus, $100 gets deposited. You get $200 in free play. And if you deposit that with crypto, you're going to get a 10% cash bonus added to your balance. It's available in all 50 states. I'm in Wisconsin right now. There's no regular sports books like DraftKings, FanDuel. So if you need a sports book, Wager Attack is available to you. It's available in, you know, if you're in like California, Texas, you know, some parts of Florida, if you don't want to use Hard Rock, Wager Attack's available to you. Link down in the description below to sign up today. And if you want to support the channel, other than hitting the like button for me, real quick, hit the like button for me and subscribe to the channel. If you want to support it further, you can go to ProfessorParlayShop.com, use code YouTube, and you'll get $10 off your order of your Professor Parlay tee. It's black and white, high quality. Get yourself some merch. Let's get into the main card. Mario Bautista taking on Patchy Mix. I can't wait to see this one. I really think this is one of the better fights because I've been watching Patchy for many years in Bellator, and I always thought this guy he's so good. Like, he should be in the UFC. I want to see him against UFC level competition. And I think this is like a good matchup for him to come into the UFC with, because Mario Bautista is not, he's not a Corey Sandhagen. You know, he's not a top 5 guy just yet. I don't know that he's ever going to be, but he's not a top 5 guy. But he's a ranked guy who's not old. He's not too young. He's right in his prime age of 31, almost 32. He's had some solid experience in the UFC. He's on a win streak. So I think this is a good fight. And when I look at it stylistically, like Patchy Mix, if you don't know who he is, man, he's a deadly grappler with a nasty guillotine. He's tall for the weight class. And he's on a nice long win. I mean, he's 20-1. His only loss was to Juan Archuleta, which was a close decision, a 5-round fight where he lost. It was 48-47, you know, how I saw it. He lost basically one round, would have swung it into his favor. He could be undefeated, but he did lose that one. His last fight against Magomedov was over a year ago, and it was a close fight. It was a very close fight. It was a split decision, I believe, and it was a fight where Patchy Mix had all the hype behind him, and it almost felt like kind of a letdown spot because he had finished Magomedov before. He had submitted him, and it was a rematch where Magomedov looked like, you know, it was pretty much a 50-50 fight, and Patchy was, I think, a minus close to 300 favorite, something like that. Minus 250, somewhere around there. And it was basically a 50-50 fight. You know, Patchy didn't really have a ton of grappling success in that fight. He was forced to stand and strike. And he really looked very ineffective when he was put on the back foot. And that's going to be something where I think Mario Bautista could exploit him, because Batista's a guy that kind of wants to go in there and outwork you. We saw him against Jose Aldo. Put him up against the cage and, you know, clinch him up. And I think he could do similar things here to Patchy. You know, Bautista's not a terrible grappler by any means. He's actually a pretty solid grappler, but he's going to have to mind his P's and Q's on the mat with Patchy, who is very slick with the back takes, very slick with going for that neck. You know, if Patchy gets a back take on Bautista, realistically, that's probably a round in the bank, because Patchy Mix gets on your back. He's got a really nice body triangle that I don't think Bautista's getting out of. So Patchy, I think, has better grappling here. You know, he's got a lot of good experience as well, but it is his UFC debut. Maybe there's some pressure on him. I think Patchy, I'm going to take him for the early pick. But, you know, I'm not completely writing off Bautista here. You know, he's probably looking at this as, I want to beat the guy who's got maybe the bigger name. You know, not to say that Patchy Mix has some huge name, but if you are into MMA, you know who Patchy Mix is, and you know you respect his skills. So Bautista, definitely going to take a look on that, just considering he's the underdog, and, you know, Patchy's a favorite here, but Patchy Mix is going to be the early pick. I think he probably is able to win the early rounds and withstand maybe a late onslaught from Mario Bautista if he doesn't get him out of there early. Let's move on. Vicente Luque taking on Kevin Holland. Kevin Holland, when the world was down on him, we backed him against Gunnar Nelson, and it worked out. But let me tell you this. Kevin Holland was the underdog there, and I didn't really believe that he should have been against Gunnar Nelson, and it was a close fight. It was a close fight. He almost had him knocked out of round 1, which, you know, would have been amazing, but he did show he could win a 3-round decision at the welterweight division. Now, obviously, Kevin Holland at middleweight and welterweight is two different things. He is at the welterweight division here, which is good, because you know it means he's got to cut some weight. He's got to be on somewhat of a diet to make 170. And at 170, he's huge. 6'3", 81-inch reach. He's going to have a 5-inch reach advantage and a 4-inch height advantage. But Kevin Holland's takedown defense at 170 still isn't amazing. I mean, it really isn't. I mean, Gunnar Nelson took him down a couple times, and I was like, dude, you're way bigger than this guy. How is he taking you down? And I know Gunnar Nelson's a really good grappler, but I didn't really think he's that great of a wrestler. And you're still able to get Kevin Holland down. So even though we won our bet, I still walked away with that fight as like a, you know, Kevin might be a future fade, you know, even at the welterweight division in his next fight. And here he is at minus 220. And I know Vicente Luque was, you know, kind of on a steep decline after losing to Joaquin Buckley and kind of just mailing it in. But then he got a win over Temba Garembo. And it was a nice submission victory. I believe I had Luque by sub in that one. If not, I had it in some parlays. But either way, it was a nice win for Luque. Hard-earned win. I mean, I knew he was really motivated going into that fight. And he got him with a shot. Garimbo shot a takedown, and he snatched up, I think it was an anaconda. It might have been a Darce, but it was an anaconda, one of those. Front headlock stuff. It's an interesting one because, is Luque back? If Luque is back, then there's a lot of reasons why you could like Luque in this fight because, he could probably get some takedowns on Kevin Holland. But the thing with Kevin Holland is at 170, he still carries a lot of pop. He carries a lot of pop, and if you're throwing hard at Vicente Luque, he's not exactly a guy that's going to be going in there, slipping and ripping. He's kind of a guy that walks forward and eats the shot to give a shot. So if he's going to be taking punches from Kevin Holland, I'm sure he's going to feel them. And if he starts to feel them, in the back of your mind, you're thinking, oh, no, we're not doing this Buckley thing again where you just kind of pull guard. And then basically, he kind of admitted that he just kind of mailed it in that fight against Buckley. So, I'm going to take Kevin Holland for the early pick just because I think I trust him, which is crazy to say. I trust him a little more to go in there and fight. But, Luque's skill set, I think, is pretty dang good to where he shouldn't be this big of an underdog. But I'm still going to take Kevin Holland for the early pick. Kelvin Gastelum taking on Joe Pyfer, feature bout of the night. We got Joe Pyfer coming in here after pulling out against Kelvin his last fight. I guess he ate some bad Mexican or whatever back when they're in Mexico. But they rebooked it, and I think Pyfer is probably a little bit happier to be fighting in New Jersey. So kind of worked out for him. He's a big favorite again. I believe he started to drop as the favorite in the first fight, but I was on Pyfer in the first fight. I just think Pyfer is way too big, way too powerful to lose to Kelvin Gastelum, man. Kelvin Gastelum is a welterweight, has a welterweight body. He's constantly just disappointed us in so many aspects. He should have always been at welterweight. He just doesn't want to do the work to get down to. I'm trying not to cook him, but dude, over the years, just Kelvin Gastelum I've just never looked at him as a serious fighter. Dude, you should be at 170. So 185 against a big guy in Joe Pyfer. I just think Joe Pyfer's going to be too much for him. I think Pyfer's the better athlete. He's in his prime or entering his prime. At least, he's taken his loss. He's come back better. Got the first round knockout against Barrio. I think he's going to put a hurting on Kelvin Gastelum. He's a huge favorite, so that's not saying anything too crazy. But, if Pyfer needs to, he can go to the wrestling. Gastelum is just going to be a lot. I literally could see Joe Pyfer. We can literally see Joe Pyfer just getting his hands around the waist, just lifting Kelvin Gastelum up and dumping him. I think Joe Pyfer is just too big for Kelvin. I was on him in the first fight. I'll be on him here. I'll take Joe Pyfer for the early pick. To the co-main event. Women's bantamweight. Juliana Pena. Big underdog here. We've seen her do it before, though. But she was not the champion. And Amanda Nunes at that time was pretty much just, I don't know what she was doing. I think she just thought she was invincible, and then Juliana came out with her normal, dog on a bone type of style and just outdogged her. So can she do that to Kayla Harrison here? I find it highly unlikely. I think Kayla Harrison's probably going to be able to get her takedowns early on in this fight because Juliana Pena has a career takedown defense of 30%, or it might be even lower. To take this girl down is pretty easy. It's pretty easy to take this girl down. And what does Kayla Harrison want to do? She wants to take you down. But if Kayla Harrison doesn't take her down, then Juliana Pena is not an amazing striker, but she is somewhat effective. She is tough. She's probably going to be looking to push a pace, trying to tire out Kayla Harrison. And, Kayla hasn't been 5 rounds in the UFC. She's been 5 rounds before when she was in PFL, but that was also at 155, I think it was. So at 135, how does her cardio hold up? She's got to make 135 here. She can't be at 135 and a half, can't be at 136. So every pound is going to count on that weight cut because she is absolutely massive. She's going to be way more physical than Juliana Pena. She's going to be able to get those takedowns. She's probably going to have good top pressure, going to be able to hold her there. But every round starts on the feet. If we get to round 3, that's where I think we're going to find out, if Kayla Harrison can go 5 rounds at 135. I'm going to say she does. I think she's a world-class athlete that is going to prepare herself for those 5 rounds. She's going to come in here, probably get those takedowns, land a ton of ground and pound. Juliana Pena is probably going to be bloodied up, but she's still going to be walking forward, still going to be trying to work. She's going to just – Pena's game plan here is it's so obvious, man. Like, try to wear out Kayla Harrison because, you're not really better in any aspect. I guess maybe striking, she might be the better striker. I don't think Kayla's a very good striker, but I don't know that it really matters because she could just blow through you and get the takedowns. And I don't know that Pena's going to be able to strike much. So it's pretty obvious her game plan is going to be to try to tire out Kayla Harrison, make her quit late, and win the fight that way. But I think Kayla Harrison gets this one done. She's a huge favorite. She's going to be the early pick. She'll probably be the official pick. But would I lay minus 600 something on a women's title fight? No, not going to do it. Kayla Harrison will be the early pick, though. To the main event. We got Merab versus O'Malley. I heard through the grapevine that before the Merab versus Umar fight, O'Malley was already lined up to fight the winner. So it's not even the fact that Merab beat Umar to where they just, had to make this fight. If Umar beat Merab, they were going to make O'Malley in the next title fight either way. So it's kind of stupid to make the fight when Merab literally just beat this guy 7-8 months ago. I guess it is somewhat of a long time, but either way, he didn't fight anybody else. So O'Malley's literally coming into this fight with after a loss to the guy he's fighting. So we haven't seen him since. Apparently he got hip surgery. He had a torn labrum in his hip, so that was what was causing him some distress in the fight, and he lost it. But we cannot forget, 2 of those judges scored that fight 48-47 for Merab, which means Merab won that fight by 1 round. I know everyone thinks Merab just ran through O'Malley, but if you actually do watch that fight, Sean did get taken down, and he got held up against the cage, but he was still able to get up to his feet and create separation multiple times. Like, it wasn't exactly just Merab takes him down, that's it for the round, like, he's not getting back up type of thing. Like, O'Malley was able to get back up to his feet, was able to create some scrambles. It's just when he was on the feet, he wasn't very effective at all. Like, he wasn't really throwing much. He was very hesitant, and he was kind of allowing Merab to do this thing where he, like, dances around and throws weird stuff, and then he's at range, and then he's shooting on a hip. Like, there was nothing for Merab to look at to avoid him from doing what he wanted. So into this fight, O'Malley's got to put something out there to make Merab question what he's doing. I don't even know if that's possible because Merab is the machine. I don't think there's any questioning in there. It's just, I'm going to do what I want. Like, that's just what he comes into fights with. He doesn't care what he gets hit by. He pushes a heavy pace, and he's going to make you look silly because he has an infinite gas tank, and he can shoot as many takedowns as he wants. He could throw as many punches as he wants. He could knee you in the thigh as much as he wants. He's not going to get tired. So in a 5-round fight against Sean O'Malley, I got to take Merab for the early pick because I don't know what goes different. There are a few things that I think O'Malley could do differently that could give him a better chance at winning a decision. But at the end of the day, I still think Merab probably wins a decision. Could O'Malley knock out Merab? Of course. This is 4-ounce gloves. O'Malley has really fast reflexes. He's got big knockout power. He's got good knees up the middle. He's got good kicks. But Merab does a really good job at always keeping his hands up and not exactly exchanging with guys where they want to be. So I'm going to take Merab for the early pick. O'Malley's a huge underdog here. It says moderate underdog, but just to consider that O'Malley was a minus 125 favorite in the first fight, and now Merab's minus 325. And Merab was an underdog to Umar. He was an underdog to O'Malley. He was an underdog to Petr Yan. The only guy that he was really a favorite against was Henry Cejudo. And that was mainly because Cejudo was, 35, 36? Merab is older, though. He's 34. You know, maybe this is the time where O'Malley can catch him, but I can't really doubt Merab at this point. He's going to be the early pick, but the line is to the point where I don't really know if there's a ton of value on Merab at minus 325. Like, let's just say he goes to another 48-47 decision victory. Does he cover minus 325? Probably not. I guess you could maybe cash your ticket, but that's not really the game I'm trying to play. So, Merab's the early pick. Kind of rambled there, but that's going to do it for the video. I appreciate you for watching. Like the video for me. Subscribe to the channel. And we'll be back here throughout the week with more content. I appreciate y'all. Till next time. Hey, Job Picks.